My name is Bill Rivenbark, and I'm a professor at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. However, I've had the privilege of participating in the prior summer schools on performance management in public administration here at the Università del Salento. I have provided four main topics. First being performance measurement. The second being how to identify robust measures to measure the performance of service delivery in public organizations. 3, the role of benchmarking. And 4th, performance management itself. So I'd like to take a couple of minutes and unpack each of these topics for you. The first one is performance measurement, and this is where it all begins. This is where we collect data on the services that we provide in public organizations to our respective citizens. And the data come in 3 flavors. The first is output measures. And output measures are critically important for 2 reasons. 1, they allow us to track the volume of services over time. And output measures are used to calculate the higher order measures of efficiency and outcome, which brings me to efficiency. This is where we take the total cost of a particular service, divide it by the outputs, and so we can track the cost per output over a period of time as we use different strategies such as technology to keep costs low. And efficiency data allow us to monitor how we're doing in this area. The third measure, though, is the most important of the 3, and that is the outcome. And the outcome allows us to track the quality of services. And outcome measures are even more important because when public officials track outcome measures, public officials are more likely to use performance data for decision making, which leads us to performance management, and I will come back to that. The second topic I cover is how do we identify good measures. Of course, we can always go and look at other organizations. We can use technology to help us identify measures. We can look at the literature for measures. But there's no substitute for the 4-step process that I use in the training within the summer schools. That's where we take a program or a service, let's say recycling, for example, and we start with its mission statement. From the mission statements, we identify our goals and our objectives to understand at what level of performance that we want to accomplish. And when we move to that point, then from the quantifiable objectives, we are able to identify the outputs, the efficiencies, and outcomes. And again, I encourage you to use all the different ways to go and look at other local governments. We even use AI today to help us generate ideas around the types of performance data that we should collect. But again, there's no substitute of bringing your employees together so they understand context of the types of measures that we collect, going with mission, goal, objective, and then measure. And then we have the contextual boundaries that we use so when we collect the data, we can use them more efficiently and effectively. The third topic is the role of benchmarking. And I often hear this term is benchmarking, and that's just not correct. During the summer schools, we go over the different types of benchmarking, but the one that we spend the most time on by far is comparison of performance statistics when one local government compares its respective data against other local governments. And this can be a daunting task given that it often can be difficult to collect data from other local governments. But when we do that, not only then we have internal trends to think about with our data, we have comparative data which gives us even another layer in order to think about as we make critical decisions. So I encourage you, benchmarking requires more effort. It is going to require you to contact other local governments to collect their respective data. But when you do, just like outcome measures increases the probability that we're going to use data for decision making, benchmarking data also increases the probability of using data for decision making. Then we finally come to performance management. And that's where we're now actually talking about using data, thinking about data, drawing conclusions from data, analyzing data, and eventually making decisions that will change our internal management policies and procedures. We use an example in doing that. I like to use the bus system. Where we collect output data on the volume of stops, on the volume of riders of our buses. And at some point, if those trends continue to grow, we're going to have to make the policy decision to invest more resources into this service with more buses that will able to accommodate the demand of the riders throughout our respective communities. We then use the cost per rider is the efficiency measure to think about examples of how we are using data. Of course, we're never going to charge riders full cost, but we do need to understand what the cost per rider is in order that we can think about what we should charge for the respective tickets. Again, we're never going to be full cost, but having that extra layer of understanding provides more accuracy as we set the price for the tickets that we sell to the riders. But ultimately in the bus system, we're wanting to move to those outcome measures. And one of the critical outcome measures for the bus system is arrival time. The percent of buses who arrive at their respective bus stops on time. And that's critical because we know in the bus system, one of the ways we can think about satisfaction among riders and when the bus arrives on time. And we use those data to think about different ways that we can increase the arrival time over time. For example, we want something in the 85 to 90% range. We want that metric very high that ensures we're operating the bus system very effectively and which translates into rider agreement or translates into rider satisfaction. So here's the four topics I go over in conclusion, and that is performance measurement, reporting the data, how to identify measures through mission, goal, objectives, measures, benchmarking, taking that extra effort and going out and collecting those data from other local governments, and then finally we arrive to performance management. And that's the reason we do all that, is to use and leverage data for decision making. I really have I've enjoyed participating in the prior summer schools here at the Universidad del Salento, and I look forward in participating in future summer schools on these valuable topics for organizations in the public service. Thank you so much.